Welcome everyone, and thanks for coming along. Alistair SPREE, and most of you probably know me, but you probably not all have met Monique Alfris. And we were just catching up, and 2005 is when Monique graduated from the SPREE undergraduate program. So that was the second year that we had a full lot of students going through. So it's really nice to have Monique back here. To pay us a visit. Thanks for coming, Monique, and telling us. I'll let Monique do the rest of the introductions, but welcome.
Thank you. So firstly, thanks to Alistair for organising for me to come back. It's always nice to be back in my old school. Not that this is where we were, actually. We were like way back in the day up the hill. So I just wanted to see if there was anyone else that I should recognise. I think Daniel's the only one here that's done. Oh, you were in Hyderabad. Oh, awesome. Even I wasn't there for that one, so you've probably got even more of a relevant story than I do. So Pollinate's now in Bangalore and Hyderabad in India, and our HQ is in Bangalore, and we've hired staff to run our Hyderabad office. So anyway, a few of you maybe have seen presentations on Pollinate before. So with this presentation, I thought that we would mix it up a little bit. I'll still talk about the sort of more technical aspects of what we do, but what a lot of people seem to be interested in is the fact that some of Pollinate did come out of a master's research project and PhD project out of the London School of Economics. So obviously I studied renewable energy as well, and that's how my interest in Pollinate came out. But Katerina, one of our co-founders in the very beginning, actually did a willingness to pay survey with our customers. And that was part of how the idea of Pollinate was formed. So I thought you might all be interested in sort of how, you can take research and stuff you're doing at uni and take that into the next step of something into the real world. So the first thing to talk about really is what social entrepreneurship and social business is. Highly contentious area, and everyone argues about what the definitions of it are, what it means. Does anyone have an idea of what a social business might be, other than Daniel, because that's cheating? Anyone at all? Yep.
I was going to say, businesses that's created for profit, but also to serve a social purpose.
Mm-hmm. So it can be for profit. It also can be non-profit. Muhammad Yunus, probably, who started microfinance in Bangladesh, is probably the person that's been the most vocal about social business. And for him, a social business means a business where the profits are either returned to the expansion of the business, so you never pay any interest or equity returns to anyone, or the profits of the business are paid back to people at the bottom of the pyramid or poor people. So that's his very sort of strict, stringent definition, which Pollinate actually fits. But globally, there's a lot more sort of talk and scope about what a social business means. And there's no defined sort of, this is what it has to be for people to call themselves a social business. So I was just going to draw a graph on the board, which actually works really well sort of for the Australian market, because for a long time in the Australian market, even when I was here in Sydney 5 years ago, no one was really talking about social business at all. And so it was always charity on this end, and it was business on this end. And there really wasn't very much in the middle. And people were not really interested in giving anything to anybody that was in the middle. They just wanted to give stuff away for free, or they wanted to sell it, making as much profit as they possibly could. So what a social business is, according to the more sort of global definition, is actually anything which fits all the way from here all the way down to here. So at a very extreme end of the spectrum, you have Amazon. So Amazon is basically pouring money into their business, not making any profits, trying to expand their services into all sorts of ways that can improve people's well-being. I was reading yesterday that they're now going into trying to get people easier ways of getting errands done in their houses. So there's like an online portal for people to connect to gardeners and mechanics and all of those sorts of things to try and make that market a little bit better. You have an organisation like Facebook, which is now working on internet.org. So you would say that, they're not trying to screw every last dollar out of everyone. Amazon definitely isn't, because they're losing heaps of money, but they're definitely more on this end of the spectrum. Then you go all the way down to here, where you might be a charity that gives away a product but recoups their costs from their customers, or at least part of their cost from their customers. Pollinate, out of all the social businesses that we've seen, definitely sits more on this end of the spectrum, but we are hoping to reach financial sustainability and actually be able to make a small profit in each of our cities operating as profit centres on their own, so that they can sustain their businesses forever. So we're certainly not planning to be anywhere at this end, but we're not at this end where we're only planning to recoup some costs from our customers. We are hoping that over time they should be able to recoup all of their costs. And part of our reasoning for that as well is that people are already spending money on energy in the developing world. And so our reasoning was that, let's say that they spend half of that money and they get better quality of service, and we're able to make a financially sustainable company. That's a really good win-win outcome for everyone. And people's charitable dollars that they're giving sort of year on year can be used to set up a business where that money continues to revolve and continues to help new families every year. So, as Alistair was saying just before, sometimes digressions are good. That was definitely a digression, but now back to the script, as Alistair also likes to say. So there's sort of 3 phases that I'm going to be talking about generally in this presentation. The first phase is your time at uni. The second phase is sorting yourself out and figuring out what it is that you want to do. And then the third phase is making it happen. And I'm going to sort of intersperse stories of Pollinate throughout that. So if you have any questions at any time, or you want me to sort of get more technical about particular aspects of it, because this presentation is not too technical, I'm more than happy to go in and explain that detail, or perhaps even get Daniel to tell us more about it. Okay, so the very first step when you're at uni, perhaps you're deciding your research program or a master's degree, maybe for a lot of you guys, you're past picking your undergraduate stage, is to pick something that you really believe in and care about, and perhaps will never be courageous enough to do again. So I think renewable energy definitely fits into that category for those of you that are from the School of Photovoltaics. I mean, I'm 31 now. I definitely have a lot of friends that are on the sort of kids mortgage career path that have sort of been coming up to me and saying, oh, I really wish I had done, something when I was a bit younger, when I had a bit more freedom. Of course, you have freedom for your whole life to do whatever you want, but it is sometimes a bit easier when you're younger. So for us, there's 6 Australian co-founders, and the one thing that really united us was that we really loved sustainable energy, and we were really passionate about renewable energy. And the second thing is that we were really passionate about the developing world. And so obviously a really big problem in the developing world, as all of you guys know, is energy access. There's 390 million people at last count in India with no access to electricity. A very interesting figure to me, because only 12,000 people are counted without electricity in Bangalore, and we haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg, and we've sold products to 40,000 people in Bangalore. So already you start to question if that 390 million figure is correct or not. So these are the communities that we work with in Bangalore. This is sort of what Pollinate's bread and butter is. The people that live in these communities have actually usually faced some kind of financial shock in their life. So either they've had a wedding, which you wouldn't normally think of as a financial shock unless you're a father perhaps, but in India, weddings last for days and days and days and cost family lots of money, and they usually need to take out a loan. Or someone's had a health crisis. So in Australia, if you get sick, you have the public service to be able to go to a public hospital and get whatever treatment you need. It's not the same case in India. People have to pay for their medical treatment themselves, and often also for their families. So something like that will happen, and they'll move from the rural areas into the cities, basically because there are better opportunities for them in the city to be able to earn more money. So the people that live in these tents, actually where they come from, might have a more sort of standard, proper home, nothing like what you guys would have, but something that looks a little bit less like this and a little bit more like something that's stable, but there's no job opportunities for them. So they typically typically earn about $1.50 a day. And they've actually moved into the city for that because that is a much better opportunity than what they're able to get back home. This is one of our, I guess, probably medium-sized communities. There's probably about 50 tents there. I think that the average size of the communities you guys were looking at in Hyderabad was actually bigger than what we've seen in Bangalore. And we're servicing about 500 of these communities at the moment. Does anyone have any questions about the communities? Or I'm not going to talk too much more about it, so no. Okay. So the other thing that we were really passionate about is the fact that obviously, as you can see, there's no electricity wires going into these tents, no running water, no sewerage. As you can imagine, there's mosquitoes everywhere, there's rats. So one of the first things that was easiest for us to tackle with our background of sustainable energy was the fact that most people were using kerosene for lighting and wood cook stoves. One thing that really struck me, I mean, I'd heard a lot about kerosene use when I was at uni, and you sort of hear a lot about the price of kerosene and how it's becoming comparable with solar, which is definitely the case. But on sort of a more very confronting face for me was that I thought that kerosene lights were always in hurricane lamps. Now, I don't know if that's sort of the feeling that you guys had, but it's actually like just a wick out of a glass container. So it's a very open flame. There are cats running around all the time and kids, and it gets knocked over and they live under plastic tarpaulin. So there's obviously a safety aspect there. They emit a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. A lot of people have come out and said that it's low-hanging fruit. There's issues with black carbon, which is a very potent greenhouse gas compared to other types of greenhouse gases. The other thing that these people are doing is that they're cooking with wood on a 3-stone fire. So won't go into too much detail. I'm sure that you guys have heard a lot about this sort of stuff at uni, but I mean, walking into one of those tents, as I know that you guys have, it sort of brings it back to reality, just this giant waft of black smoke that comes into your face. And we've had many fellows that have come on our programs that actually just can't even walk into the tent, let alone spend time in there, and they have to send the other students in to go and do the work because they're just unable to deal with, you know, sort of the wall of smoke that you get faced with when you walk into the tents. So respiratory diseases are the second biggest killer of women and children in India, and that's primarily from breathing in smoke from wood fires and kerosene lamps. So while you're at uni, come up with something interesting that you're interested in, and then do something interesting about it, which means something new or hard or different than what other people are doing. As Alistair always used to say to me in my final year thesis, keep it small because it's very hard to do in a year. But even in my final year at uni, there's always something like that's a little bit unusual or different that you can start to think about or do in your thesis, even if you're just keeping it small. So one of the biggest things for us was that everyone has this desire to build the new biggest or wonderful sort of invention to be able to solve these problems. But we realized that there were already so many great products out there that existed, and engineers that were much better than I ever could have been, that already are developing these products and doing a lot of work on them. So you have people developing the products, and then you have these people that we're working with that we see all the time, but there's no link in the middle. And so what we realized, the interesting part about what we were doing was not producing the products or finding the people because they were there. It was actually producing the distribution network in the middle, which is what makes Amazon such an interesting company to me. So distribution is a little bit of a hard market to get into. There's not very high margins and there's not very much money for equity or investment in it because you don't need to build big factories and you don't actually need very much money to do what you want to do, which means that you're not attractive to a lot of sort of standard financiers. So that's when we sort of realized, wow, this is something really interesting that not very many other people are focusing on. Why don't we focus as much of our attention on that as we can? So this is what our sort of vision is, a trusted and effective distribution network for urban poor communities, creating access to sustainable technologies. So the urban poor piece to it was very interesting to us too, because in India there's a lot of talk about the urban-rural areas, about the peri-urban and rural areas, but there's very little focus on the urban areas, and I'll get to why that is in a second. But that was kind of where we were like, oh wow, there's like something here in distribution that no one's focusing on, and there's something with the urban poor that no one's focusing on. Is there something that we can do with both of those? So we were a very grassroots sort of organisation. So just quickly on our business model, basically we have a headquarters, and the headquarters does negotiations with all the suppliers and picks the best products and decides what the pricing schemes are going to be. Then that goes to our cities. So I'm very excited to say that with your help, we started in Hyderabad in February and hired our first 2 pollinators there, which is very exciting. We've been in Bangalore now for a couple of years, and in July we're hoping to move to Kolkata. With the grand vision of being in 50 Indian cities by 2020. We'll see if we'll get there, but I'm pretty sure that we'll do 3 by the end of the year. Those city headquarters work to support our pollinators, which are actually their own little businesses. So they're what we call micro entrepreneurs. Basically, they're small businesses. We give them stock on consignment, and then they are the ones that go out to the communities and they provide their services to our communities. So just on our pollinators, in that sort of thing where we found, okay, with the distribution, there's kind of an interesting question there. Is there something we can do with that? With the pollinators, it was very similar. So our pollinators usually come just out of the communities themselves. So there's sort of one layer above the community. They usually haven't finished high school. They can't read very well. So we looked at them and we said, well, what are the things that we can do to make your life easier so that you can go out and sell those products? And that's exactly what we provided them. So we looked at what they were doing and how they were operating, and then we created what, sort of a lot of people have probably heard before, a business in a bag. But our business in a bag was very focused on the things that our pollinators needed the most to be able to do their jobs. So one of those, for example, was a smartphone. We've developed our own phone app where you enter information about the customers. Our customers actually get a 5-week loan to pay back our number 1 seller, which is a solar lantern that has 2 mobile phone chargers in it. And so the mobile phone app helps them to keep track of where everyone's up to on their payments and where they are and what their phone numbers are. And even if you're only semi-literate and you can read a little bit, you can learn. I taught one of my staff members that could barely read like a word of English how to use the app in a couple of hours, because it's very easy to be able to memorize. Okay, you press that button, then you enter this information. Then I just have to click on like the fact that I'm selling them this product, and then I'm able to make the sale. That was probably one of the hardest things that we had to do, was to develop a phone app for someone that is illiterate, because I don't even understand what it means to be. They're actually semi-literate, I should say. They're not illiterate, so they can recognize words, but they have to memorize them to be able to use the app. So you can't give them options because they won't remember the options they need to do. It's that whole Japanese management theory of you need to like get the processes happening so 99% of the time people are doing the same thing. And I've just never experienced that before, because always in all the other jobs that I did, it was all over the place and people would figure it out as they went. But you can't do that. You've got to sort of streamline things. That was a very interesting lesson learnt for us. So yeah, proud to say that we're now at 8,200, or actually I think we're at about 9,000 now. We're actually on track to hit 100,000 people by the end of the year, which is really exciting. So just to take a step back, our biggest seller is a solar lantern. I think that the panel is about, 4 watts now. Don't remember. No, so nobody remembers. They're just like, it's about this big. The solar light is a Greenlight Planet Sun King Pro 2, for those that sort of know the industry. We actually put all the different solar lights out there. We put much cheaper ones out there that still could provide a good quality of light, but this is the one that our customers chose that they were the most excited about. One of the things that was very interesting out of Katarina's willingness to pay study is that people were much more willing to pay for a mobile phone than they were for a light. So part of the, for a mobile phone charging. Part of the reason for that is a mobile phone charging means more opportunities for them. They can call work or they can call their families, they can listen to music. A light is definitely important and something that people are willing to pay for, but it's secondary. So it's more for the children to be able to study or for the wife to be able to cook or, you know, for socialising and that sort of thing. So anyway, interesting. Which brings me to my next point, which is watch for the glittery gold idea twinkling in the periphery. So sometimes you can be so focused on what you're doing and you just are like, this is important, this is what we're going to do. The mobile phone charging thing was definitely one of those moments where we were like, wow, we have no idea what our customers want. So now we very much have an attitude of taking products out to the market and saying, is this what you want? Are you willing to pay for this? But not only getting an answer from them, actually getting money from them. And then when you get the money from them, that's what I really like about the idea of business versus charity, because if people value it, they'll give you the money. So you're letting the market speak. But if you just give it to them for free, of course they're going to say yes and that they want it. I do that. People give me free stuff all the time. The other thing I really like about our model is that we have a 5-week payment plan. So this is the classic case of what happened with our cook stoves. We took our cook stoves out. Cook stoves were very popular with our customers. I think we sold 50 cook stoves in a week. But we only had 50% of our customers make their second repayment. And so that told us that yes, they were interesting, but there was something wrong with the product, which meant that after the first week, they weren't using it anymore. So rather than dumping, 5,000 products to the market and then realizing that nobody was using them, actually with us, we find out pretty bloody quickly because they tell us straight away through all of our tracking mechanisms that this isn't something that they're interested in or is useful to us. And if we were operating on the charitable side, this is something we never would have found out. Another really sort of interesting glittery idea that was quite far removed from what we were originally thinking about in energy access was our international programs. So when we started, we were all quite young. I was the eldest and I think I was 27. Our youngest co-founder, I think at the time was like 21. We didn't have very good networks for being able to raise money. One of our competitors, their youngest co-founder when he started was 47. So he'd been out in the industry for ages. Everybody knew who he was and was willing to give them money. What we realized was that we sort of as a side exercise had thought, oh, it'd be really great to bring over international students to be able to show them what we were doing. Because I knew when I was at uni, I hadn't heard anything about social business. I really wanted to learn more about it. And part of the reason I did the renewable energy or solar photovoltaic degree was that I really wanted to go into Nicaragua. So we thought, oh, wouldn't it be great if we brought students over? And then we realized that we didn't have the startup capital for our pollinators and we had no one to train them. And then we realized, wow, we're interested in bringing students over. Students can support the pollinators to start their businesses, both from a financial point of view and from a skills transfer point of view. So you're sort of hitting all of these birds with the same stone. And that was what sort of really helped to gel our mission together. So bringing students over from Australia helped us to meet our final part of our mission, which was making social business mainstream. We really wanted to show other people what we'd learned and give them experiences on the ground. We wanted to empower local Indian entrepreneurs, and basically anyone with a high school education here is able to do a huge amount of skills transfer sort of on an individual basis, as these guys will be able to tell you, simple things like diary keeping or learning how to use the app and memorize the different segments, or basic hospitality skills, all these things that these people have never had. They've never had a mentor before. So imagine never having a mentor and then all of a sudden having a group of 3 amazing people being your cheerleader around you for a whole month. It was just revolutionary to see the change in these people over the month of time that the students spent with them. And then, of course, improving the lives of India's urban poor. So our students, when they come over from Australia and around the world, are actually the ones that go out and find the communities. So they go out and find the communities and then map where they are across the whole city using Google Maps. Quite an interesting process. They look at the satellite map and they see what they think are communities, and then they go out and actually what's called ground truth, like, is that actually a community or not? Has it moved? And then we pin it, and then we send the pollinator out to go and provide with the services. So our kind of glittery idea was, you know, we found this gap with distribution, we found this gap with urban poor, and then there was also this huge opportunity in sort of the skill base of young, interested and passionate Australians. And one of the things about Australia that I think sort of unprecedented in other parts of the world is the amount of generosity that you see from people here. I mean, the students fundraise money when they come over, and most of the students that I've spoken to have had not very much problem fundraising the money that they need to fundraise just from family and friends, which is not the case in other parts of the world at all. One of our pollinators, or one of our students came over from France, and he was like, there's no way I could ask my family for money. Okay, so the next thing about being at uni is finding your friends. You have an excuse to make heaps of new friends now, and they'll definitely come in handy. So this is just a list of our board of advisors and our sponsors that we've picked up along the way. We actually have quite a few more now, but you'll see UNSW up the top in the middle here. Thanks very much, guys. Been with us since the absolute beginning, and just was really amazing before we were even anything and had all of these other people supporting us. UNSW was there from the beginning, and I think it's, you know, sort of a testament to the fact that the school does support students and alumni after they leave. But if I hadn't have gone to the school, there's no way they would have supported us. So, you know, it's about finding and establishing those connections. Phase 2 is sorting yourself out. What's the time before I drag on with... Oh, great, still got heaps of time. Okay, so second phase is sorting yourself out. So I'll just go through this very quickly. It's sort of more of a career finding what you want to do exercise. One thing that we all found very interesting was to do a happiness graph, basically to say how happy or sad you were at different points in your life, and then basically try and figure out what it was at that time that made you happy or sad. One thing that was really interesting for me that came out of this was, as long as I had good food and good internet, I was happy. And I was just like, wow, is it that simple? And it really was. So
Take you to lunch after.
Thanks, that would be great. I'll be on my phone. Yeah, so it will be different things for different people. For some people, family is really important, and family is what makes them really happy. And so if you're going to be away from your family for long periods of time, then you're going to be unhappy. One way that you can fix that is bring your family with you, which is definitely what Pollinate did, which I'll talk about in a second. The second thing is to find your why. So why this, why now, and why me? For us, a lot of it came down to this woman, Lolita, who was one of our first customers. Basically, I mean, they were extremely poor, much poorer even than our average customer. They had no light in their house. They couldn't even really afford kerosene every week. The children were not able to study at night. Lolita would stay up at night trying to mend clothes by the cook stove. And we're like, bloody hell, something that someone takes camping in Australia is going to change this woman's life. And so for us, that was sort of, why this? Well, it costs $50 and it's going to change her life. Like, why now? Well, she needs it right now. And why me? Well, I have the product, I understand it, I can sell it to her. Then you can test it. So test your why is, the way that we tested that is we said, okay, it works for Lolita, works for us with Lolita. How is it going to work with more people? People that we perhaps, you know, don't connect with as much on a personal level. Are they still going to be interested to buy? Is there actually a market here? You know, if you went up to a drunk man in a community, as far as you could possibly get from Lolita, is he still going to be interested to buy? And overwhelmingly, the answer for us was yes. Like I said, Katerina did a willingness to pay study. And basically, that's how she found all these communities and was able to compare them to Lolita. Third phase, making it happen. So I guess this is just kind of a little bit of advice as to if you do sort of have an inkling that you want to start something or try something, even if it's something small, what were the steps that we took that were successful? So put your toe in first. We all moved to India for a month in July in 2012, and that's all that we were committed to. We were like, well, we'll just try this out. We'll see how many people are interested in the product. Do we even like working with each other? You know, Jamie and Kat had been together as a couple for 7 years at that point, and they were like, well, maybe we can't even work together. You know, all of those sorts of things. We just spent a little bit of time assessing the market, not sort of, you know, diving head in first and saying solar lights is the answer and marching into the communities. That was the first thing that we did that was important. Turn your friends into co-founders. One of the most important things for us has been the fact that there's 6 of us and we've never been alone. Every time we've had a problem, there's always been more than one head to bring together. I've had many people say 6 is too many. 6 for us has been really great, but even just having 2, at least you've got sort of another head there that's able to help you with those things. I'm not particularly extroverted. I'm definitely more of an introverted person. I find it hard to like go out and network with people. I'm fine talking about stuff like Pollinate, but just sort of generally, you know, my circle of friends is quite small. But it was one of those things that I realized very early on, that particularly the fact that I'm introverted, and in an organization like this, you have to sort of be out there and fundraising money and letting people know what you're doing. You need people who are extroverted so they can do that and you can do the stuff that you're good at. So I used to set myself these little goals, like every time I went to a function, I would try and talk to 2 new people that I'd never spoken to before. You speak to those 2 people and then you don't need to worry about it anymore because you've sort of done what you need to do. So just for any introverts in the room, it is possible to be an entrepreneur. I'm very goals orientated, so I quite liked the 2 people that I needed to talk to thing. The other thing with us is that Ben is my partner, Jamie and Kat are partners, Alexi and Emma are moving to India this year and both bringing their partners with them. So particularly when you're living sort of far away from home, if family is something that makes you happy, bring your family with you or find your family within the organisation that you're working in. One thing I wanted to point out here as well, which I just linking back to an earlier point in the conversation, was that you'll notice that they're all white faces and there's no Indian people there. One of the things that was really interesting to us moving to India was, like I said, a lot of people talk about the rural poor or peri-urban poor, but the urban poor communities in India have gone ignored for a really long time. Like I said, the census doesn't really pick them up. Most of the people in the cities don't believe that the urban slum communities are very large. It was very, very hard for us in the beginning in India because nobody believed that these people, A, existed and B, were bankable so that you could provide them with products or loans or anything like that. I guess that was part of what made us so determined, but it also meant it was very hard to find anyone who was Indian to support us at all because they just didn't believe that the market existed. I'm proud to say today that our default rate's down at something ridiculous like 0.02% now. So our customers have just been phenomenal at paying back. Part of the reason is the loans are small and we know where they live, so it's very hard for them to not pay back, but they are definitely bankable. And the second thing is 50% of our Indian board is now made up of local Indians and 90% of our staff is Indian. So it was really amazing for us to sort of see that change in people where we were like, look, we've sold 8,000 products. Like, how many more do you want us to sell before you believe that these people are out there? So we're definitely starting to see a change in the market too. I don't know whether you guys experience this with your Indian fellows, but a lot of our programs, we actually have Indian students that are on the program as well. And it's amazing to see the change in them after working with us for a month, because they might be living next to a slum community, but they actually think that's the only one. And they really have no idea about how many people there are or what they're like, or the fact that, you know, people in the slums in India, their values and their family structures and their history is actually all the same as people from middle class and upper class areas. So it's sort of like when it's too close to your face, sometimes you don't see it. And it takes a foreigner to really step in and just be like, I remember that we went to visit ANZ in Bangalore back in the early days. And we were talking to them and they're like, oh, but there's no slums in India. And we took them to the top of the building and we pointed down. We were like, that is one of the biggest slums that we're working with in India, right next to your bloody building. So anyway, just wanted to say that's why there's so many white faces in that photo. The third thing of making it happen is to fail or pivot lots. I'm pretty terrified of failure. And every time something went wrong, I'd just be like, oh, I'm just going to pack it all in. It's all over now. But there was something in us that just sort of kept going and kept hacking away at it. And after a while, you realize that your failures are some of the best stories that you have. Like, for example, this was us trying to sell solar lights in a Sunday market that exists in one of our communities. So in the background here, we have one community here, and just behind where Kat's standing on this side, there's a really big community as well. And we thought, perfect, these people go to the market, we'll set up a stall, we'll sell the lights, it'll be great. No one bought a light from us. I think I did this for 6 Sundays straight, standing there for 12 hours in the sun every day, just feeling like I was back in my scouting days, selling sausage sizzles and cookies, and nobody was buying anything. The only interest that we got was from the police that wanted to know why these white people were selling solar lights in the middle of an Indian community. But that was a really great lesson for us, because what we realized was that we actually needed to go inside people's houses and show them what the light was doing, because they had no idea what a solar light was. Like, they, don't really go into the same sort of shops. They don't have access to television. Nobody'd ever come to tell them about what a light was before. But you turn on the light at night, and you guys would be able to attest to this. You walk into someone's house, and straight away they understand the benefit and they realize what's going to happen. And they may not buy the first week because they don't trust you, but when you start turning up at their house every week saying, no pressure, but just in case you wanted to buy the light, we've got it here, then they start to realize that they can trust you as well, and you're actually someone that's going to hang around and fulfill the warranty and help them when they have any problems, or sell them more lights if they want to take them home. So that was a massive fail, or as the industry likes to call it, pivoting to something different. Another one was our paper form. So like I said, a lot of our customers are illiterate. Paper forms mean mistakes that need to get transferred into an Excel document that crashes every time that you open it, and you lose all your customer data. You need to get all that information out and give it back to your pollinators. So we met with the Salesforce Foundation, and they were like, we'll give you everything for free, just sort it out. We can't stand these paper forms you're using anymore. So they gave us a lot of help and support to develop this mobile phone app, which now our pollinators use to be able to track their sales and figure out what it is that they're supposed to be doing. Okay, it's getting towards the end now. Last few steps in what you need to do to make it happen. Use your critical university brain, definitely, because it will help you find all the problems, the hypocrisies, dumb things that you are doing. You've definitely received an amazing education in the 4 years that you've been here. I know Jeff Cotter's not around anymore, but he was the one that taught me how to use Excel so that I could manage our database system, for example. But sometimes you also need to turn off your critical university brain, because you might want everything to be perfect and 100% working and exactly the right answer before you do anything. But sometimes you just need to jump in there and just start doing, because the only way that you ever allow the market to speak and tell you what it is that they really want and what they value is when you go in there. We actually replaced our first 100 products because we took the product out there and then realized that it wasn't really working for people, and we changed it. But if we hadn't sold those first 100 products, we would have had no idea what it was that they did actually want and be able to replace it. And now, having sold almost 10,000 lights like we have. Don't worry about money. I know a lot of people don't go into this sort of thing because they're worried about their financial status and how you're going to pay the bills. And I think I get asked all the time how I feed myself. It's really great if you're introverted to make friends with extroverted people, to be your co-founders that love going out and fundraising and meeting people and doing all that kind of stuff. That's definitely what I've done. But the money, if you're doing something where there's value and you're passionate about it, the money will come. So, lots of organizations that I've seen, like, yes, you do go through hard times, but in the end, you do figure it all out. It is good to have a little bit of savings in the bank before you go, so that you're not under too much pressure when you go over. But particularly if you go to an Indian, a little bit would be good. Particularly if you go to a developing country, it's amazing. I was working on a consulting job for Australia 1 day a week, and that was 1 day a month, and that was enough money for the entire month for me to survive in India. So, sometimes you need a lot less money than you'd think. For us, we could, if we had $1,000, we could start selling 20 solar lights on a revolving basis. So every 5 weeks we could impact another 20 families. In each family there's 5 people, so you're impacting 100 people every 5 weeks. You can learn a lot from just a couple of $1,000. So don't worry about not having the skills. You actually don't know what you need until you start doing it. Now, having spent a lot of money on an engineering degree and 5 years working in the engineering sector in Australia, I'm proud to say that I am the CFO, Chief Financial Officer of Pollinate Energy. So you think that you need this particular thing to be able to do what you want to do. Actually, I guarantee you have absolutely no idea what skills you're going to need. Just actually for the last 2 months, I've been operating as our head of HR. And so when you're head of HR, you do what you know best, which is to go and Google the best way to interview people, and that's how you figure it out. And of course, once you've started doing it, now that I'm the CFO, I've started to take some very basic Indian accounting courses just so that I can get myself up to speed. But you just don't know. And so I have a lot of people that come to me and say, oh, I need to do a Masters of Commerce before I can do anything like that. And I'm just like, I did a Masters of Commerce and I really have no idea what it was from that degree that I'm using today in Pollinate, because it's definitely, I think in the beginning we wrote a business plan. That was the last time I remember using anything useful from that degree. So engineering, like I said, is quite different. Engineering is a little bit more critical problem solving skills, but don't worry necessarily about not having the skills. You can start a business these days if you know how to use Facebook. Don't worry about believing in yourself. Like I said, I'm incredibly afraid of failure. I'm an introvert. I've always been very hard on myself my whole life. I was like, I can't do something like this. You need to be the kind of person that's like, really out there and ambitious and positive about yourself all the time. But actually, once you start doing things, like you have amazing people like the School of Photovoltaics that came along and said, yeah, of course we'll help you. That's amazing what you're doing. And I was just totally blown away. Sometimes you don't need to believe in yourself. There will be other people there that will be able to help you with that. Some people have no problems with this. I do have other co-founders that have no problems believing in themselves, but I'm just saying if you don't, find co-founders that do. Look forward to jumping out of bed every day because you can't wait to get to work. I'm on my holiday here in Australia and I was so excited to come in and talk to you guys today about what we're doing at Pollinate. I just feel really excited and passionate about it, and actually love being the CFO. I never knew I would get into finance until I started doing Pollinate. Working through the bureaucracy in India is definitely something that my critical engineering skills have helped me to be able to figure out how to do, problem solving. So that's the end. I just wanted to give us a bit of a plug. Each year we do usually have a fundraising event. This year we've decided to do something a little bit different, which is to get people to support us by switching to renewable energy. So Meridian, the power company, owns PowerShop. PowerShop have just moved to New South Wales. And if you decide to switch your electricity provider to PowerShop, we'll get a $100 donation for everyone that switches. So you don't need to pay anything. PowerShop pays that to us. And then for most, not for everyone, but for most electricity providers, that you can compare your bills when you go through and see how you're going to do. But for most electricity providers, you should be able to save money on your electricity, which is great. So you've given us money, supported us, lighted up lives in India, and you've saved money on your electricity bill, and you're using a clean energy source, or supporting a clean energy source, I should say. If you are interested in doing this, I'll probably send a link around to the school anyway, but you need to make sure that you go through the link on our website, and that's how we get supported. Once you are signed up through PowerShop, you can also buy your electricity in bundles. And when you buy your electricity in bundles, you can buy the Pollinate bundle. And when you buy that, 1 cent of every kilowatt hour you purchase comes to Pollinate as well. So you can continue support just by turning your lights on. Every time you turn your lights on, you can be thinking, oh, I'm also turning my lights on in India, or turning lights on in India, which is great. So instead of the fundraising event, we thought we'd have a go at this year. So if anyone's interested, you can come and speak to me about it afterwards. I also thought I would give the floor to Daniel for a few minutes, because I know it's nice to hear other people's voices. He came and did our fellowship program in December, which was the last one that we held in Bangalore, and he just had a few experiences to share.
Good. Okay. Hi, so I'll just give a brief introduction about myself. My name is Daniel and I'm a third-year student in the School of Renewable Energy, and I'm also doing a Bachelor of Commerce, so I'm doing a double degree. So I'll talk a bit about what drew me to Pollinate Energy in the first place. So a bit about, I wanted to learn more about social business and the different types of social business that existed, the different business models that you could have. So a bit like what Mon drew over here, I wanted to learn more about what existed in between. And I wanted to learn how access to sustainable technologies such as renewable energy could improve the lives of people in developing countries, and how all that could contribute to sustainable economic growth in the future. So these were the kinds of things I wanted to explore, and by the end of the program I definitely learnt a lot about this, and I'll share a few experiences that I had. So our group was made up of 10 international fellows, 8 Australians, 1 girl from Mexico and 1 from Norway. So it was good to have diversity in the group, people from different backgrounds, different cultural upbringings and different ages. And that definitely made all the discussion and conversation we had much more interesting, being able to have different ideas from a lot of people. So we also had 3 Indian fellows in our group, and I found them to be very, very valuable because they were also like our translators as well. And they helped us to learn more about Indian culture and to bridge the cultural gap that existed between us and the local Indians. Some important things such as giving us advice as to what's good for lunch, crossing the road, and how to bargain with the cab drivers because they're always ripping off the tourists. So we were split up into 2 groups, and we had 2 major projects that we had to work on. I was part of the Hyderabad expansion group, so it was our task to finalize all the details and planning for Pollinate's expansion into Hyderabad, which happened in January, and that's the group that Louise went on. So that was just a lot of logistical work and planning, so we had to send emails and make phone calls and get in contact with people that could help us with the launch in Hyderabad. But I'll talk a bit more about the water filter group because that was the main focus of our program. And it was our job to help the pollinators introduce water filters into the communities and overcome the challenges that they faced in selling a new product into the communities. So some challenges were that many in the community were just resistant to change, so they were just skeptical of the new product immediately. Some of them didn't prioritize clean water as highly as other things, and it was our job to convince them that the benefits of a water filter were worth paying for, because as like a solar light you can see the benefit straight away when you switch on the light, but with something like a water filter that takes months for them to experience the benefits. So it was a bit hard for the pollinators to sell. So our job in the fellowship program was to go around and support our pollinator in selling the water filters. So one thing I really enjoyed about those working bee sessions was that we got to consult with the communities, and that enabled us to develop strategies that were suitable for them. And then we came back to our groups, and then we had big discussions, and we came up with solutions through trial and error, as Mon talked about. And then we could be able to test our theories and go back into the communities in the afternoon and get their feedback, and then put that back into the cycle so we could refine our approach every day. And I think that was a very effective way of devising a strategy. And by the end of the program, I think we had to present our findings, and I would say we were pretty successful. We sold about 50 water filters, and I think that was a great result. So the program was very well run. It also included a lot of Indian culture. A lot of great cultural experiences. So we had some time off, and we got to go around the city and explore local culture and everything like that as well. It was definitely eye-opening, life-changing, and very rewarding. I found I got a lot out of it myself personally, being one of the younger members of the group, as everyone else there was a bit older, and I learnt a lot of, got a lot of life advice and guidance from everyone else. My one biggest takeaway from the program was that it definitely helped me to figure out what I want to do in the future. Before the program, I was quite unsure what I wanted to do. Being in renewable energy and economics, there was just a lot of choice, and I'm interested in everything, so I didn't know what I wanted to do. But being able to get first-hand experience working with a social business, it really validated what I wanted to do, and ever since I've come back, it has allowed me to focus on taking the next steps to get into this industry in the future. So with that, I'd like to wrap it up and pass it back to Mon. All right. Thank you all for listening.
Thanks. So huge thanks to Daniel and Louise for being here. I mean, really the students are the ones that mean that we can exist and continue to do what we do. Our programs run 3 times a year for students in December, July and January, July, December in the holidays. If you're interested in coming at another time of year, we also run young professionals programs in April and September, which are for people that are a little bit older. But actually we get the whole broad range in all programs. So the program before yours, we had the CEO of Australian Ethical came along as one of our student fellows. So we do definitely get a broad range of people. Yeah, so I think that's the end. Did anyone have any questions? Not interested in anything? Yes. You already know everything. What are your questions about?
How many solar lights did you say you're going to sell by the end of the year?
We are aiming to sell 25,000 by the end of the year. So we're on track for 25,000.
So is that like an exponential growth? Because that seems...
Well, we're in 1 city now. We're planning to be in 3 cities by the end of the year. So not exponential growth on a pollinator level, but we are planning to bring on more pollinators by the end of the year. So we'll see how we go. It's our aim. Yeah.
So how are the pollinators doing with the water filters?
So it sort of has been our continual issue with products is that the pollinators love selling the solar lights. It's what they know how to sell. They've been doing it for a really long time now. So they are still definitely selling the water filters, but it has taken a bit of a backseat. But we've just hired a new amazing product manager called Artie, and her full-time job is going to be working with the pollinators on the other products other than the solar lights. So we've definitely started to see some movement again come out of it. But it is hard when you guys all leave because, you know, there's this huge excitement and all this energy behind it, and then all of a sudden it just goes So now we're picking it back up again. So hopefully we'll start to see it kick off in the next few months again. The customers are really happy though, much happier than the cook stoves. We've had 100% repayment rates. Yep.
Is the finance the hurdle for you to like scale the model?
Not really. I mean, money's always a problem. It doesn't matter how big or small you are and how much money you have. Everyone always says money is a problem. For us, we've always been very conscious that we want to make sure that our core business is very strong and replicable. So already we've developed our core business. We're very close to financial sustainability. We always said we want to spend the time getting to financial sustainability in Bangalore and then expanding from there. So that's sort of operational. It's more operational than financial.
And do you plan to like expand the product category? Now I see it's like
definitely. We're
very mentioned about the water treatment as well.
Exactly. Very keen to expand the Am I like way over?
No, we're running like 1 minute over, so that perhaps, look, if anyone's got any more questions, perhaps we better wrap up there. We're about to get another class coming in here. So
I'll be just outside if anyone wants to.
Let's thank Monique again. Fantastic.
Thanks.